Hi, my name is Ken Davidian, and welcome to the video series Organization Theory in Space. This series is based on the Oxford Handbook of Organizational Change and Innovation, second edition, edited by Marshall Scott Poole and Andy Van de Ven. Today, we'll be getting an overview of the sixth major part of the handbook entitled Core Aspects in All Change Models. In the last video, I said this episode would cover the last section of the handbook, but I lied. In this episode, we'll cover the second to last part, and we'll talk briefly about the 5 chapters it contains, from 27 to 31. So let's get started. Chapter 27 compares 2 ontologies of change, the episodic and the continuous change concepts. Basically, is change a separate state from continuity, comprised of a sequence of events, one before the other, one after the other? Or is it a continuous flow of actor agency and movement, connecting past to the present, to the future? They introduce a view that actors take past, present, and future events into consideration as they change. Change and continuity are 2 dimensions, basically, of the same movement. Chapter 28 is an interesting chapter entitled Emotionality and Change. This chapter has a lot of interesting research results. For example, emotions are in everybody, everywhere, at some point, saying that all people, including business leaders, experience emotions and that emotions influence their choices and behaviors. Another example shows that positive emotions enable leaders to think more creatively and therefore generate better change plans. Chapter 29 talks about change and the dark side of change and resistance to change. The authors assert that not all change is good, meaning some change is actually bad. Also, they propose that not all resistance is bad, so some resistance can be good. Dark side perceptions then become a concern if a change is even perceived to be unethical, frivolous, irresponsible, motivated by self-interest, harmful, or destructive. The authors really unpack the dimensions of change, and it's a fascinating chapter with some frightening and fascinating results. Chapter 30 begins by trying to define what organizational death is. It turns out, surprise, surprise, that the definition of organizational death is subjective and depends on definitions of the organization and its boundaries. 3 types of endings are discussed, including the legal ending, the ending of a social arrangement, and practice-based endings, where they blur the boundaries of what a firm is by adding artifacts, symbols, routines, activities, and other amorphous elements. Finally, many types of endings are discussed, such as the departure of key figures, changing identities, program closures, and things like that. Chapter 31 is written by the editors of the handbook and talks about how the 4 different change motors that we talked so much about in the first 4 parts of the book are combined. They say the motors act across levels of analysis, require multiple perspectives to be fully understood, are constantly changing, and are subject to other characteristics of organizational change, such as path dependency. Motors may be acting in many different arrangements, and they can influence each other through direct relationships or indirect relationships. Finally, these motor combinations generate complex processes like those found in organizational change and innovation. So when we take a look at how these chapters fit into the social system hierarchy levels of analysis chart, we see that these chapters talk about overview topics and also address the organizational and intra-organizational levels. I'm beginning to think that maybe the chapters I've put into the multi-sector level might be extended down to the field or sector level of the hierarchy. I'll be interested to hear what you think, and if you think I'm putting the correct chapters at the correct levels in the hierarchy. So, how do some topics in this section pertain to the space sector? I think the chapters on emotionality and dark side are particularly interesting because these are concepts and topics that we basically do not include in any kind of our thinking or models of the space sector and the organizations within it. So I think that's a really important aspect that we should start considering to some extent, when we start figuring out how to analyze these industries and industry segments. That's it for this time. And next time on OT in Space, we'll give an overview of the last of the 7 parts. This one reflecting on the handbook chapters, identifying strengths and weaknesses of the main concepts. Until then, I hope you found this material interesting, and if so, please subscribe or hit the notification bell to make sure you don't miss what comes next. OT in Space is produced by Impossible Research, LLC. Impossible Research, or IRL, mainly conducts process research on the topics of innovation and industry emergence within the context of commercial space industries. IRL also offers research consulting and STEAM outreach. This video is intended for educational purposes only.